everyone, welcome to the RePHIL studio. This is going to be a new project that I sort of have in mind, or something that I want to plan out for some time. And I really wanted to make a sort of podcast series for my passion for Bang Dream. This is going to be a little bit of a test, and as you can see, it's episode 0, so perhaps the other episodes won't necessarily look exactly like this, but I just wanted to try this project out and see what you guys think. So of course, if you listen or watch the whole podcast and you feel that it's something that you want to see in the future, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and comment below. But yeah, this podcast, what I hope to plan to do is just to share a lot about my experiences and a lot of different various aspects of the franchise. When it comes to the game itself, perhaps things around the series, around the franchise, and a lot of various topics I want to talk about. Of course, I do also planning on bringing special guests on this podcast as well. A lot of these guests have very different perspectives about various different parts, and I really want to get their idea as well. And I think a podcast series is something that, it's not really out there in the Bang Dream series. So I just want to test this out and see how it goes. So with that said, let's begin and see what we have here. So episode 0, I want to talk about sort of my tiering experience in Bang Dream and what my opinions are on the tiering community. And I also want to share some tips for everyone in terms of tiering. As someone who is, I wouldn't say like an expert in tiering, but someone who is relatively familiar and comfortable with tiering, I want to give you guys some tips for those who are newer, and perhaps even the older tiers will have some takeaways from my advice as well. So I first got into Bang Dream in 2018 when the game first came out. I saw I think it was like a month before the game was released. I saw some advertisements, thought it was pretty interesting, especially because I had some interest in rhythm games. I never really committed to any rhythm game of a sort, but I saw that this had a lot of cover songs, and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be great to play like some of my favorite songs, on a tap 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 kind of system. So that's how I really got into Bang Dream. And when I first got into it, that was really what I got into for the cover songs, and eventually really appreciated the franchise as a whole, the other music, the characters, and many more. So I really started to become a fan of the series and really enjoyed playing the game a lot more. I would say after 2 to 3 months of the game being released. I was a day one player, but I didn't really actually touch the game until 2 to 3 months later. Now, I noticed that when it comes to actually playing the game, I really just kind of played it mostly for fun. Again, I was more or less invested in the series itself, not too much in the game. So, I just kind of thought of it as playing a game for fun, just kind of tap, tap, tap to my favorite songs and maybe a few friends here and there, and we would just play. Nothing too serious. So, to be honest, for pretty much almost a year, at least a year, almost 2 years, I really just kind of considered it to be a very casual game, and I never really took anything, the game itself, quite seriously. But there were times where there were events, and I saw that these events are pretty important, so I thought, okay, well, why don't we try and see if we could get a decently high ranking in these events. So, again, I didn't really think about tiering at all. I just thought, oh, well, let's see if we could get a decently good ranking. And by decently good ranking, I mean getting anywhere in top 5,000 or just a little below that, or even top 2,500. So again, was not very serious at the game at all. I never really considered going for higher ranks to be anything on my priority. So I first did Neo Aspect and was okay. I got top 2,500 using a lot of resources and being very wasteful in that. There wasn't actually a top 2,500 title at the time, so I just ended up getting a top 5,000, which was whatever. But the first real kind of tiering experience I did was the Band Story 2 of Past the Palettes, Luminous Once More. And again, it wasn't something that I took very seriously. I just kind of burnt cans as much as I can and just, try and get a title without spending too much time on it. And it worked out pretty well. I thought it was relatively easy to do. And I never really thought about going more than that or trying to be sort of resourceful or kind of save resources on it. I was okay, well, I'll just get it. And that's how it is. So I'm sure a lot of people, when they first started the game or first started, before even tiering, this was they probably followed a pretty similar path. So throughout the first 2 years, I pretty much only got 2 top 1000 titles, and both very wasteful and kind of done it all by myself. The other one was Twin Star Ensemble featuring Sayo and Hina. And yeah, it's just, I just wasn't very resourceful, and it just really didn't seem that fun. It didn't seem very that interesting. But go about 2 years later, about September of 2020, there was the upcoming event of which is called what was it called? Poems, Dreams, and Dreams, Reality, and 100 Poems. That event. It featured Sayo and Aya, who are two of my favorite characters. So I thought, these are two of my favorite characters, and I thought, why not give it a go? Let's try and see if I can get top 100. Of course, I had no really expectation of how exactly I was going to do that, but I just knew that, it's a mixed event. I don't think it would be very popular, so I think it would be pretty easy to get that. Then soon after, Pastry was able to contact me, and he was going for top 1 in the event, and he invited me to join his server, and to work together to get the titles that we want. And I was like, oh, a server! Like, there are Discord servers for particular events. So I thought, okay, sure, let's join. So I joined it, and I realized this is sort of my introduction to the tiering community. And again, I always say this a lot of times, but I thank Pastry a lot for inviting me to this server, because without him, I just wouldn't know that tiering communities existed at all. So that's how it all started. And after doing all that, I realized it really was not that bad of an experience. Sure, it was kind of arduous, and took a bit of time to get used to the efficiency and what you need to do in order to tier as efficiently as possible. Like, I wasn't aware about stuff like getting rid of pins, getting rid of things like not full comboing, and also playing the same song over and over again, Unite from A to Z. It was just kind of a disaster at first. So I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. But what really motivated me was, just how nice the tiering community was, and understanding that, I was new and unfamiliar with the process, and they gave me guidance on that. Everyone was really friendly as well. And of course, I already had friends who I already planned to work with. Shout outs to Sal and Skitter. Both of you were also very helpful, and we all worked together to basically all get the same score, essentially, in that event. And Sal even got her first top 10 in that event too. So it was a very endearing experience, and that really motivated me, and realized that it really wasn't that bad. Like, I ended up getting 17th in the event, and I really didn't feel like I put that much time and effort to do it. So I thought, oh, well, maybe tiering isn't that bad. Maybe I'll just go for it. Let's see what other events I can do. And ever since then, I've been a bit more involved in the tiering community, and I haven't done any big event yet, trying to get top 10 or any sort. The closest I got was top 12 in the Himari and Tai event, but I was trying to get top 11, so I failed that mission. But case in point, couple of top 100s and a few top 1000s here and there, and it really opened my eyes to the tiering community, and it made me realize that tiering is a lot more than just sitting on a screen, spending 24/7 or whatever, just to get a JPEG that has a 1 or a 2 or maybe 1 less 0 than that other person over there. It's a lot more than that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about, why tiering, we all know that tiering is not fun, right? Just playing the same song over and over again, tap, 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 whatever. It really isn't fun, but all the things that we've done in the community to make sure that it becomes as smooth as possible, as efficient as possible, and just make it a less sort of I guess difficult process for people, right? It just goes a long way. It goes quite a long way. So I guess a lot of people, when it came to tiering communities and such, there's a couple of misconceptions about the tiering community, and I just want to also share my opinions on it, because of course the tiering community at first can seem quite intimidating, especially for new people who don't really know where to start or how exactly to start. And again, for me, I just got randomly invited to some server, and then I just kind of joined the community and slowly integrated myself there. So I was in the same steps as many of you who are newer, and I just want to share my thoughts on how I was able to sort of transition and get into the community relatively smoothly. So, of course, the first thing is to, definitely be active and understand and acknowledge that, a lot of these people in these tiering servers all want a same goal and they have a common goal. And that's that they want to show their devotion for a particular character, right? Or a particular event, right? People, what really opened my eyes, what really made me realize is that people show their devotion for Bang Dream and the series as a whole in many different ways. A lot of people buy all this merchandise in the back, and you just like fill your things with merchandise, with albums and all that stuff, and maybe go to every event. And yeah, that's definitely one way to support the franchise. Other people do it in different ways, and in this case for the tiering community, they show their devotion for the game and for the franchise through pouring their time and effort to a particular event and tier for the event. Again, to me, I still firmly do not think that, the JPEG of getting first, second, third, to me, it's still not something that I could fully accept that it's like worth the effort, because at the end of the day, for me, I just feel that JPEG in a sense is still not necessarily like too worth it for me. But what made it more worth for me in terms of tiering is just the experience you have with people. Just being able to interact with a lot of people with, again, a common interest, a common goal, and just working together. Just those connections you build throughout that event is what really makes me feel, it becomes so much valuable, the tiering experience. Again, I still don't think that, that title in itself is the main prize, right? A lot of people just see that, just this person gets a whole bunch of firsts and seconds. That's like what they're really only aiming for. But tiering is a lot more than that. I think it's really showing your devotion for a particular character, a particular franchise, and doing that with the people that you love and the people that you really care for and support. So, again, some people might think it's very closed off, and we're doing a lot that what we can to try and make it as more open as possible. I think the tiering community has gone quite a long way from being like a really kind of small community of like relatively similar members, and it has really branched off to quite a bit since then. Again, I've only joined it very recently, and by recent I mean like 8 months, not even a year yet, right? So I can't necessarily comment on how the tiering community was way back in the day. I'm sure, and if this podcast goes well, I'll have a couple of special guests who joined a lot earlier than me and be able to kind of share their experience about tiering communities and how it's evolved throughout the years. But yeah, the idea is that the tiering communities are certainly very welcoming, right? They open me with welcome arms when I first joined, and it can get a bit intimidating at first when you see like some people who are like pretty crazy. It's like, wow, this guy's going for top 1 or top 2. Like these people must be like great people, right? Or like some like like high stature people, right? But at the end of the day, they're all just like the same people. They're just like you and me. So we're doing what we can to try and open up and certainly be more welcoming as well. It's obviously something that I imagine the tiering community continues to work on to make sure it's an open place for everyone. But it also is up to the person itself to really find that way to feel that sense of belonging. And what I really did is that when I noticed that a lot of people in my first tiering experience, what I did is I just kind of joined voice chats here and there and talk with people in the general chat and just kind of get a hang of myself and just kind of get to know these people and just interact in a very positive way, right? Obviously, you don't want to be like a dick or you don't want to be rude to people, right? Or just make people feel uncomfortable. So that's sort of the idea, right? So as long as you find a way to just establish yourself, greet people well and treat people with respect, then people will remember you, and it becomes a lot easier to join the community there. So a lot of people also think that tiering communities or tiering people, they're just going to be some people with no life, and they just like spend all this money and time 24/7 just tapping on the notes, and that's why they're able to get their titles. But that's not true. Again, as I mentioned before, these people are just like you and me. They have work, they have school, and they have to balance that as well. So if anything, the tiering community is how these servers that they create is what helps them make sure that they can get the goals that they want in the most efficient time possible, so that they have the time they need for their own life, right? They need time for school, they need time for work, and of course they need time for their mental health and their physical health as well. So again, there's definitely some people out there who think that it is a lot more like these people who just don't just sit there 24/7 and such, but it really isn't true. It really isn't true. These people are very nice people, and there are people, there are human beings that they're working hard to show their devotion for a character. Now, again, this sort of sense of belonging is also what I feel is very important, because you want to establish yourself as someone who's credible and someone who is willing to support people. I've been very overwhelmed by a lot of the support ever since joining the community, that people were saying, "Hey Phil, when is your next top 10? When is your next like podium? Like we'll be there to support you." It's like, the support is just so overwhelming sometimes, and it's all just being me doing just what a normal nice person would do, just give back, right? Help people when they need help in tiering, and just kind of mingling and interacting with people, and just having a good time together. So again, if you want to go for top 10, you certainly can, right? As long as you plan well ahead and gather the support that you want to make sure that you are able to get your goals. And I think that, especially the tiering community, whatever you give to the community is what you will receive in return. If you really go out there and help people in filling for their rooms and helping them get the goals that they want, like playing with them and just being a nice person, right? Not being uncomfortable to work with. The more effort you put into those events, the more you'll see that you'll be able to get back when the time comes that maybe you want to tier for a particular event. So again, it's all a give and take process, and this is what really kind of surprises me, or also really just makes me very comfortable with the tiering community, because again, as long as you show that devotion and you show that you want to work together, people are very willing to support you. Now, in the case that if someone does want to get top 10 in a server, and maybe they're not specifically on the roster for a tiering server, does that mean you're automatically disqualified or discouraged to get top 10? The answer is no. Snipers are a thing, and if you are not on a roster but you want to get top 10, I say still go for it, right? You could certainly do that. Of course, you won't have the tiering server because you're not on the roster, and the roster, these people on the roster are people who've prepared well in advance, months in advance, so it kind of seems unfair to them as well, right? So again, you acknowledge that it's not just just you, right? It's about the others as well. They also have to put that time and devotion to get the title they want. It's not a reserved spot. It's only simply declared. So even in the case that if you don't get the roster spot but you still want top 10, again, I still go for it, right? Because if you want to show, or you want to show dedication that you want to get it, I'd say go for it. And again, all these tips that I'll share later as well will give you an idea of what you can do to tier efficiently. Again, some tips that I have. So again, in a tiering server, just because there's a roster that's full, that doesn't mean that it is reserved, right? Again, within the tiering server itself, you will have to follow that political hierarchy and just make sure that we help them get the goals that they want. But if you're not in the tiering server but you still want to go for it, I say just go for it, right? Again, because it's not necessarily reserved, right? It is an uphill battle for you, but again, it's something that you could certainly do. And again, this kind of goes back to showing your devotion to the community, right? You could certainly join the community, right? Join a few servers here and there, help people out, and gather the connections, important connections and meaningful connections with people in the community. Then when the time comes that, let's say, an upcoming event is there's already a roster, but you're already a well-established member of the community, I'm sure you could find a lot of couple friends that would help you in terms of maybe sniping a particular event as well. So, again, I think, again, the community is something that the more you give, the more you get back. I think it's very important. Again, I don't think you could go into a tiering community and expect that, oh, I'm just going to walk in and do whatever I want and I'm going to expect people to support you, right? That's not going to be the case, right? So it really is a matter of a slow and steady progress to really kind of build those connections. And then from there, once you learn more about tiering, it gets a lot easier from there. So That's just sort of my personal thoughts about tiering communities and my experience. And again, it's been a decision that I do not regret. I love the tiering community. They are amazing people, and yeah, there are definitely some rules and stuff that you have to kind of follow and make sure that you to go through. But again, it's all a matter of decency and just showing respect and just having a good time with people to show your devotion for the series. So, of course, feel free if you have any thoughts about the tiering community as well to comment below and share your thoughts. But take a quick water break, refill in 1 minute, and we will talk more about some tiering tips that I would like to share with you. So I do plan to have a few breaks in between the podcasts to give shout outs to any partners or perhaps even sponsors. But of course, I don't have any planned at this time. So for now, the shout outs I would give would probably go to my social media. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and Twitch as well. I'm pretty active there. And of course, join the Discord server if you haven't done so already. And links are all in the description. So thank you all for tuning in so far, and the podcast will continue. All right, so welcome back, everyone. So as promised, I want to share a couple of tiering tips for people who are maybe newer to the tiering scene in Bang Dream and want to get an idea of what they could do to improve their tiering experience. So a lot of these tips I think will really help those who especially want to get like, I don't know, maybe top 10 or top 100. But even those going for top 1,000 or top 2,500, there's a few tips here that you could do so without using any cans, without using stars or your money as well, right? I made the mistake in the past where I was trying to get top 1,000 and use so many cans just to get it, where you really don't have to. There are ways you could do it without it, and I'll share those tips with you. So 5 tips for you guys on how you could improve your tiering experience. So my first tip is always plan ahead for events. What's great about Bang Dream, the worldwide server, is that the main server, which is the Japanese server, it is roughly about exactly a year ahead in terms of events. So if you see an event that just happens in the Japanese server, you know that, it's going to happen in about a year from now in the English server. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and you can use that a way to plan ahead and know exactly when an event is coming up. Now, of course, websites like Best Story, Bandori Party, they'll give you a chronological order of events as well. And you'll be able to see, okay, well, this is the event that I want to tier for. Again, I think it's very difficult to tier for every single event out there. I personally think it's best to tier for the events that you feel the most sentiment for. So choose an event and plan ahead. Like for me, I want to plan for the upcoming event that features Sayo and Kaoru. So that's in August. So I know I have 3 months in advance to prepare and just kind of organize myself and make sure that I'm able to tier during that time. Now, in terms of like preparations, what exactly you need to do to prepare? One thing you could do is, of course, plan ahead in terms of stars, plan ahead in terms of cans, and if you really want to, the money as well. Again, with cans, in Bang Dream, 3 flaming is probably the most efficient, where you use 3 flames per song. You get the most amount of event points per song, and it's most efficient. So you want to make sure you have enough cans so that you can continue to use energy to burn 3 flames, right? Again, 10 flames per bar is certainly not enough. So you want to make sure that you have enough energy to do so. Preparing cans and VS Lives are a great way to get it. That's probably the best way to farm cans, to play on VS Live. So that's definitely one thing you can do to prepare. Of course, you could plan stars as well, because stars you could also use to exchange for energy. But also, if let's say you want to use stars for a particular gacha, and maybe try to get the card of the particular event and maybe use that to improve your team. That's something that you could do as well. So planning ahead is very important. You should definitely do that, and you have a lot of resources for that. One other resource I do want to share is the Bang Dream event stats Twitter, and again, all these links will be in the description, all the resources here. This event stat planner gives you an idea of what were the cutoffs for particular events. So I think on the example on the graphic I have here is a Pasta Palettes VS Live. That was in April, and it was Play Act. And you notice how, like, for instance, top 100 was, I think, 1.8 million. So you could use that to estimate other VS lives and get an idea that, oh, if I want to get top 100 in this VS live, okay, well, the previous event was 1.8 million. Maybe I'll need a bit more, maybe a bit less, but we'll see how it goes, right? Keep in mind, VS lives, challenge lives, live goals, and mission lives, they all have a different scoring system. So you can't use a Past Up Pallets VS live to, let's say, estimate a Past Up Pallets mission live. That actually is going to be quite different. So that's something to keep in mind. So that Twitter is also very useful in terms of figuring out, okay, well, how many points I would probably need in order to do that. So my second tip is kind of going into the resource side as well, right? Talking about the cans and the stars you need. So managing your resources is very important. But I think resources in game is one thing, but resources outside of that is very important as well. So figuring out how much time you have, right? Because again, you know when the event's happening. So you want to make sure that you don't have school, you don't have, work, or maybe if you do, you want to plan around it, right? So you want to make sure you have the time to tier, and budgeting your time and working around your life is very important. Again, as I mentioned, even the people going for top 1 or top 10, they have other life commitments, they have work, they have school, so they do what they can to try and manage their time wisely so that they could, be able to have the time to tier, but also just be able to take the self-care, right? It is an arduous process, especially if you're going for top 10 or higher. You want to make sure that you are also healthy and hydrated throughout the whole process as well. So time is something you really have to budget and make sure that you plan around. And again, this is something you could do well in advance, and you kind of do on the fly as you're tiering as well. As someone who is, I would say, a dolphin, right? I don't really spend a lot of money in this game. I basically maybe spend a little bit once a year. So I don't put a lot of money into this game. So for those who are, just like me in that situation, if you want to go for higher tier events and you think that you have to spend a lot of money in the game to get it, no, you really don't actually. As long as you plan ahead accordingly and make sure you save well in advance, you can do this without spending any money. So planning a budget for, how much you're willing to spend is also very important as well. If you're willing to spend a bit more, I would also say to maybe, set a budget on how much you are willing to spend for a particular event before you just say, okay, if I spend any more, I'll have regrets, right? Because again, money is an important part of your life as well. And I think it's a proper balance of figuring out how much money you are really willing to spend for a particular event. I would personally say maybe budget a certain amount of stars or a certain amount of money for a particular gacha, and then just say, okay, that's it. Whatever I get is whatever I get, and the rest I would use for tiering purposes if needed. And of course, if you have extra and you want to use them for gacha, feel free to do so, right? I think setting a budget is very important because I don't want anyone to feel regrets tiering. Maybe spending more than what they get and still get boated in the end. Boated is the term that we use in the tiering community for those who miss out on their title that they want. Maybe because other people, of course, overtake it. So they miss out on the title that they want. So I think budgeting is very important, and just making sure that you could budget your time, budget your money, and budget your life is very important. And just having that balance between tiering and life is important. If you are having difficulties figuring out how much points you need, or for a particular cutoff, and just make sure you are able to meet that cutoff, one very important resource is the Lisa bot. Now I'll talk about the Lisa bot and where they're located later. They're spoiler, they're in tiering servers and other smaller Bang Dream servers as well. But the Lisa bot can basically tell you the estimate cutoff, and it's a live kind of process where it's kind of estimating the cutoff for each in the current event, and then just figure out what points you need in order to get top 1,000 or top 100, right? So that Lisa bot is definitely a very important resource that you can use, and it's open to everyone. So I think if you don't obtain the estimate that Lisa bot gives you, and you complain about getting voted, right? It's not really that resource is there for you, right? There's no excuse if Lisa bot tells you to get the certain amount of points to get the title and you don't even achieve it, right? So Lisa bot's very important. So a lot of these tips that I talked about are, again, very targeted towards those going for higher titles like top 10 or top 100. Now, for those going for top 1,000 or top 2,500, you don't necessarily, as I mentioned before, need cans or stars to get them. The next step or the next tip I have for those going for lower ranks is to manage your natural flames wisely. So the after the natural flame is, the flames that are naturally regenerating after a certain amount of time. So remember in Bang Dream, one flame is about 30 minutes long to regen, and then it takes about 5 hours to regen all 10 of your flames back. Now, that's something to keep in mind, to sort of use them wisely. So you could actually plan out your day around those natural flames and make sure that you continue to just play games with 3 flames, because again, 3 flames is the most efficient. We're talking about tiering efficiency and just trying to make the most bang out of your buck with time, right? So for me, for instance, I would do a schedule where, like, in the morning, maybe I wake up, I would get play 3 or 4 games of 3 flames each every day in the morning. Then during my lunch break after work, I would do another 3 to 4 games. Just before dinner, when I'm off of work, I would do another 3-4 games, and then just before I sleep, I would do another 4 games, and again 3 or 4 games, and they're all 3 flames. So playing about 12 to 16 games of 3 flames each is actually quite above the average Bandroid player and how much they play per day. So as long as you're doing that, getting top 2500 in an event is generally pretty easy to do, getting that title. Now, for those going for top 1000, you might have to play a little bit more. So you might have to play a few extra games without any flames, because at that point you probably won't have any energy left. But you could play games for sure without any flames, and the amount of event points will be a lot tinier compared to playing with 3 flames. The amount you'll gain. But if you play a little extra, maybe an extra 5 games, maybe an extra 10 games flameless, that little extra bit does add up throughout a 7 to 10 day 7 to 10 event. So doing that, it actually does put you over the edge against the average Bandroid player, and you're able to get top 1000, I'd say, relatively easily. Now, of course, there's some nuances to this particular tip, because for instance, challenge lives, you technically need to burn challenge lives to really get those points and try and get a high ranking. And other things like more competitive events like the upcoming Neo Fantasy Online 2 or Raise Sulin, you'll probably need to play a little bit more, because those fans of those particular bands are pretty crazy. They could go pretty ham on those. So there's some small nuances to this particular tip, but again, if you use your natural flames wisely, getting top 2500 or top 1000 is generally quite easy. And it's quite doable to do. You'll be doing more, and it's just a little small extra commitment in your life, right? Just playing an extra 10 minutes during times when you're normally already taking a break, like your lunch break or your dinner break. Just adding that to your schedule, and it really goes a long way. Now, why do I advocate people to go for top 1000 or top 2500 is because of the number of stars you could get. If you compare it to top 5000, you get an extra 50 stars if you go that extra mile to go there. Now, a 50 stars doesn't sound like much, and it really isn't, but it does add up. There's 3 events per month, so that's 150 stars per month. And every year, that's 1,800 stars. And those 1,800 stars could make or break that one extra gacha pull. Wow, I gotta follow while I'm doing this podcast. So let me rephrase that. That's pretty funny. Anyway, those extra 50 stars, they would add up. It could make or break that one extra gacha pull or that extra set or two in your tiering adventure. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so and again, for someone like a Dolphin who doesn't really spend a lot of money, those extra 50 stars really could go a long way, and it really is not that much of an extra time commitment to do so. So that's why I strongly recommend people to at least go for top 2500 pretty much every single event. Those extra stars that you could save, especially for a free-to-play player, is well worth the investment, I believe. So for those who are going for top 1000, right, and you might have to play an extra few games flameless, it's gonna be rough. You might have to play an extra like 5-10 games every session just to try and get into top 1000, and that could be difficult. So my next suggestion, my 4th tip, is to tier with other people. And again, I've advocated the tiering community a lot and talked about how they're very beneficial and helpful. Every event has their own server, and I even had a video. I made a video on what tiering servers and how they work, and you can watch that on how to use tiering servers to your advantage. Now, of course, at the end of the day, as much as I advocate tiering servers, they're not going to be for everyone. So if you're not really someone who wants to use tiering servers but still want to get in touch with the community, my next suggestion is definitely join the official Bang Dream Discord. So we call it Pubcord, and there's over 23,000 members, I think. And there's over 23,000, I think almost 24,000 members. And, these are fans of Bang Dream from all around the world. And they all have very different, sort of appreciations for a series. Again, a lot of people really like the seiyus, like the concerts, the music, but there are some people who are pretty devoted in the game as well. And there are a lot of people all the time that are asking for games and opening rooms, and you could certainly work with them. And they're generally very nice people. I've had a friend who got top 10 all by herself through without the tiering server, and it was because of Hubcord that she was able to get that title, right? There's so many people helping her even outside of the tiering server when she was not in the roster. So, again, no hard feelings if you're not in the roster and you want to go for top 10, right? In a tiering server, it's definitely something that you could do. And Pubcord is probably one of the best places to meet new people in the Bang Dream community and really get to make new friends and work together. Now, of course, there's also smaller communities as well, like my Discord server. Again, links in the description. We usually help each other out as well. And you can feel free to come say hi and maybe talk about this podcast as well, and give feedback about it. So again, we work together as well in many events. I'm sure we'll be working together very soon in the upcoming Neo Fantasy Online 2 and Raise a Suiland events. So come join in, and we'll definitely have a blast and have some fun. So again, tiering with other people really helps. It really motivates you, because if you're doing it all by yourself, it's so painful, right? Just going through the same pub room or just like doing it all by yourself, going to a random public room and hoping that people don't misbehave or score poorly or disconnect and waste your time. It's just not worth it, right? Doing it with people that you know and people that you're familiar with, right? One, it's a lot more pleasant, and you can voice chat with them or just talk with them and maybe even watch anime or podcasts on the side together like this one. But also just, it's just a lot of motivation to just kind of understand that, oh, I have a friend who wants to get the same goal as me, and we're going to work together. And just working together just makes things just so much easier. And it's all about reaching out and joining a community. So again, if tiering community servers are not for you, the official Bang Dream Discord server is a very good place to start as well. Again, finding the right set of friends, the right set of community members to help you and work together on the journey, I think really just makes tiering so much more endearing. And again, even if you're, let's say, going for top 1,000 flameless, perhaps it's very difficult to play flameless and just see your event point just only inching up. But maybe doing this as a way to say, oh, well, I'm doing this to help top 1 or top 10 get their goals that they want in their room. That also motivates you, and you show that you give back, and it just makes it so much easier. So again, I think that tiering with people is like probably one of my biggest recommendations. Like, tier with people, it just makes the experience so much better than just tapping on a screen playing A to Z for hours on end. So this all goes down to my final tip, and that final tip is to avoid burnout, because it's very easy to burn out when you're playing the same song over and over again, or playing the game in hours and end, and get burnt out of the game when the event is like a 7-day event, maybe upwards to 8, 9, 10-day event, right? It's very easy to get burnt out of doing that repetitive stuff over and over again. But all the tips that I've mentioned in this podcast all talk about and lean towards making sure that you don't get burned out. Planning ahead to make sure that you have the time and effort and energy to do that particular event. And also, again, planning ahead just because you don't want to tier every single event. If you tier every single event, it's really easy to get burnt out. But if, let's say, you tier only for particular events you're very sentimental about, I think it really goes a long way as well. Managing your resources, right? For a lot of people, when they first play the game, and this is for those who are just new to the game, I would strongly recommend not tiering. It's just very difficult to go and do those resources and use so many resources to tier when you don't have the cards. Again, I only started tiering after like basically 2 years of playing the game. So, I think as long as you slowly make your way of gaining the necessary, efficiencies in your team, right? Getting better cards, slowly upgrading your area items, and just getting all those resources. So then, after many months or maybe even a year from now, then you say, okay, I'm going to tier. I think it just makes it a lot easier. Unless, of course, if you're willing to spend money. But if you're not, then, it's just definitely a time management. So, again, for those who are starting new, I would probably not recommend to tier just yet. And my natural flame usage tip from before, it'll be a lot harder for you because you'll just not be getting as many event points as possible. But you can use sites like Best Story to help plan out your team, right? Best Story is the #1 place to use for tiering resources, right? You can set your account, put all your cards there, and they'll give you the best team for each event on what will give you the most amount of event points. You can also use the calculator to plan out how much flames you're roughly or points you're gaining every game, so that you could estimate how much points or how much time you need to spend in order to get the goals you want. And of course, Best Story can help with parking as well. And I have more resources of parking as well in my channel too. So managing resources, managing your time, making sure that you have what it takes to tier is also very important to avoid burnout. And again, tiering with friends, it just makes things so much easier, right? Again, to motivate yourself and do it with people and work together, it just makes it so much easier than doing it all alone. Doing it all alone is just makes it, I just find it to be a very almost impossible process to tier. So definitely work with people. And again, burnout is very common, and I see that's one of probably the biggest reason why people get voted off their particular title. So as a tip to kind of manage your time and just pace yourself, right? Pace your life and pace yourself throughout the event. It's usually the first 24 hours and the last 24 hours of event that people are really going ham in an event. So I would definitely urge you to make sure that you are motivated. Most people are motivated the first 24 hours. That's a given. But the last 24 hours is really crucial to make sure that you get the goals that you want, and to make sure that you pace yourself so that you can make that final push in the last 24 hours. Or perhaps do everything right beforehand so that even in the last 24 hours push, you're still comfortable about it. So again, pacing yourself is very important to make sure that you don't burn out at the end and just don't play for the last 24, 48 hours because you just really don't want to touch the game and you get voted as a result. And I've seen my friends suffer that through those consequences before. So those are my 5 tips, okay? And hopefully for those who are newer to the tiering sort of scene, will be able to use these tips to help out. And maybe those who are tuning into this podcast and are maybe more familiar with tiering, maybe some of the tips I've given you also give an idea of what maybe a different perspective of tiering, and maybe that's something to look forward to or consider. For me, again, tiering is all about working smart, not necessarily working hard. You do need to work hard, but you definitely, I think more importantly, need to work smart, especially as someone who's as close to free to play as possible. So these are the tips that I have, and I think this will also conclude the podcast for today. So what do you guys think, guys? Do you think this podcast is something that's interesting and something that you look forward to in the future? Let me know. Give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you really liked it, or comment below what you guys think. I hope to plan on a few more details, and perhaps episode 1 would be released sometime in next month, and maybe I'll have a couple of special guests as well. So with more planning, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think this will conclude it. Thank you all so much for listening or tuning in to the podcast. The RePHIL studio will be back. RePHIL in sometime next month, I guess. So with that out of the way, thank you all for tuning in. We'll catch you all next time.